What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and welcome to another episode of Resculpted. In this series, we'll take a scene or an image and recreate it within Cinema4d and Redshift. In this episode, we'll be making this earthy bathroom scene. We'll do some modeling to start, add in materials, and bring in some lighting to help finish the scene off. I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today, so without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, so jumping into the sculpture here, this is our image, and so what I really liked about this is just the overall earthy tones. So you have a lot of obviously green and a lot of different earth tones here as well, as far as like the wood goes for both. It looks like this bathtub and then also the counter as well, and then you do have some pretty nice shelves over here that look like they are wood as well. And then you are also kind of bringing in some plants here. So you have some plants over here in the shower and then over here as well on the counter. And then you have this nice little window here outside. And then you have some nice little accents as well too with, you know, this green towel and this rug as well, kind of complementing the tile that is in the shower here. And so the only thing that is kind of off here is there are some things like over here that just seem kind of weird, and also having this lamp in the shower here. So I would imagine this is some sort of AI image here, but this was something that was actually pretty interesting and I thought would kind of be a nice little challenge for us to kind of recreate. What's going to be really interesting too is when we're starting to apply some of our materials. I already have a pretty good idea of what I am thinking about for the tiles, and then I guess for the wood as well too, but it's going to be interesting to see how this looks, especially with the mirror here and then also the glass around the shower here. And then we do have this, I want to say maybe a window here, again just kind of off as far as like the overall perspective goes. But again, I think this was AI generated, so it kind of, you know, doesn't look 100% correct here, but we'll go ahead and give it a shot. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun, and then we have a lot of really great opportunities for some lighting here, especially here at the bottom where we can kind of use some bokeh as well to kind of create these nice vegetation light rays here. So this is the scene here. We'll be recreating it from scratch. So let's hop into Cinema4d and get this started. All right, so jumping into Cinema4d here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of establish our perspective here. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in right here, somewhat in the middle. And then I'm just going to bring in a camera, and then we're just going to actually change our settings here to about 2K. And the reason why we're doing this is our perspective is almost kind of like a square shape already, so this 2K would look quite well here. So all right, so I'm going to throw in a cube here, and this is going to be our foundational piece. We're going to kind of use this as our floor. But while I'm working on this, I'm just going to kind of change this perspective so I can kind of see the viewport a little bit more. And then I'm just going to bring in the Redshift render view and just turn that on. And again, just kind of really establish the perspective. I'm just going to bring in a dome light just so I can see kind of what's going on in the render view as well. So I'm just going to kind of turn that down a bit, hop into perspective. And then we're just going to do 2K here. And then I'm just going to set it to fit window. And then I'm just going to expand our cube out. And I'm going to move it here slightly and just bring up the camera. And bring this back. So again, we're basically establishing our perspective here. So this is going to be super important. You definitely want to make sure your foundational pieces are set up here just to make sure that, you know, everything is looking good. So I'm just going to turn on this grid here just so we can see this, and then just increase our segments to about 5 each. So that is looking pretty good here. So let me actually turn that off now that that is looking good, and then change our output here. Cool. So we are just going to copy and paste this cube, and I'm just going to move this cube up, and then we're just going to copy and paste again, and we're going to rotate this. And so essentially we're just creating our wall and our ceiling. So essentially here we're just creating our ceiling and then also our wall as well, and then just copy and paste again and do the same thing on the other side here. So, and then I'm just going to shrink this down, move this to about here. So think of this kind of like our rough draft here. We're just kind of getting the broad strokes down. So that is kind of what I like to do initially, again, to kind of make sure that our foundational items are set up correctly, and then we can kind of go into a little bit more detail going forward. So I'm just going to take this one and just kind of put this at the back here. And this is going to be our back wall where all that tile is for our shower. And I'm just going to kind of expand this up. And then I'm just going to copy and paste again. And just kind of make this a little thicker here. Bring this down, and then this is going to be kind of the side wall that's sticking out here on the left hand side. And then again, just dropping back into our 2K output here. And then I'm just going to go over to our perspective and pump that up to about 65. And about there is good. Let's actually maybe drop this to 45 here. And I'm just kind of peeking over at the reference just to kind of make sure that we are looking pretty good here. I'm just going to move this floor a bit and just kind of widen it out, and then just a little bit more here. Cool. So that is a little bit better. Now we can't really see that bottom part of that cube. And then I'm just going to raise the roof, and then again just kind of looking at our reference to see if we are looking good here. And yeah, it's not too bad here. So, and then maybe we're just going to kick this back a little bit more, and again just really trying to make sure that this is kind of set up appropriately before we kind of jump in. And then I'm just going to kind of widen this backside out a little bit more. Maybe shrink it down just a tad here. And then I'm just going to elongate out this wall. And then same with this bottom, just for good measure here. And then just kind of raise the roof again. All right, so next up, I'm just going to bring in a cube, and we're just going to shrink this down. And this is going to be kind of the bottom part of our shower here. So I'm just going to put this here, and then I'm just going to kind of fix this to make sure that it is in the right spot here. So I'm just going to bring that down and then just kind of slide it over to the right here. Next, I'm just going to bring in another cube here, and we're just going to elongate that and kind of shrink this down as well. And we're just going to hop out of perspective here just to kind of make sure that is looking right. And I'm just going to reduce that down to about there. And then I'm just going to turn on fillet just to make sure that it is somewhat rounded here. And again, that's just kind of our initial carpet here. And maybe kind of move it to the left here and just kind of move this down. And we're just going to bring down that radius just a tad here. And then I'm just going to bring this back and just elongate this out. And again, just trying to make sure that this is in the correct proportion compared to our image here. But yeah, that is looking pretty good. All right, so next up, I'm just going to copy and paste and kind of bring that size down. And then this is going to be our other rug here, kind of near right about there or so. And it is somewhat flush with this bottom rug, so I'm gonna make sure that that is consistent here, and just kind of widen this out too, and just slide this over. And then I'm just going to take this piece over here and copy and paste, and I'm just gonna slide this over and just shrink this down. And then this is going to be that black piece that you see over by the window here, so we're gonna keep that there. Next up, I'm just going to copy and paste again, and we're just going to rotate this about 90 degrees here, and we're just going to bring this up and just kind of slide this over. And then this is going to be that top part of either this sliding glass or the top of the window here, so maybe just kind of make this a little thicker. And then next up, I'm just going to bring in a cube and shrink this down. And then with this, we're just going to kind of create the foundational piece to our countertop here. So I'm just going to widen this out and just kind of bring this down. And again, just kind of peeking over at the reference here just to make sure that this is both in the correct position and the proportions are correct as well. I think what is really kind of messing us up here is the angle of the lens here. And so this is a very much a different perspective here. I think maybe because it was created by AI, it's somewhat distorted, or maybe I went and distorted our Redshift camera, but I'm just trying to kind of adjust for that just so it kind of makes sense. But if we hop out of this perspective, a lot of this stuff is going to be elongated and not look right here. So, but again, since this is our only perspective, I guess if it looks right here, that's probably going to be okay. I think the only time where it would not be okay is if we were taking multiple renders from multiple different perspectives, and then we would kind of be, kind of SOL, because all of our assets here were just created from one viewpoint. And so if we go and kind of change our viewpoint, it's just going to look a little off here. So let me just kind of shrink this down, and I'm actually gonna try this. I'm gonna try and line this up here, and then again, as we hop into our other perspective, we can see that it is quite a bit of it's quite elongated here. So yeah, that is definitely off for sure. So yeah, we would have to make sure that this is correct if we wanted to make any sort of other renders from other angles. But yeah, this is I guess this is going to be okay for what we're doing here. So I have this cube here, and we're just going to again kind of make the general outline of this tub. So again, just kind of like a rough draft, where kind of just piecing together everything, not putting a ton of detail in here, but we're trying to make sure that everything is looking quite nice here. I'm just going to kind of bring this up. Let me see, let me just situate this and then bring this up as well. And then I'm just going to take this piece and maybe kind of bring this forward a little bit, just because it was a little too close here. And then I'm just going to kind of fix our carpet here just to kind of adjust for that. Now I'm just going to take this and then kind of maybe put this in the middle here just to kind of represent that little divide here. So maybe let me just bring this down and just kind of take it over here real quick. And I'm just looking at our reference here, and I think we did pretty good here right off the bat here, so not too bad. So it is looking okay so far. There is some stuff we need to adjust, especially this bottom portion of the counter. It's kind of creeping into the bath here, so we'll definitely have to adjust for that. All right, so I'm just going to give it a quick save here real quick. Let's see, I'm just going to copy and paste again, and then just kind of bring this over. And I'm just gonna shrink this down, and we're just gonna rotate this, and maybe just kind of bring this up to the top here. And yeah, just about there. And that's going to be that black piece at the top of the shower here. And I'm just trying to kind of line this up correctly. And actually, I might have to pull this one back just to make it kind of make sense a little bit more. And then same with this glass piece as well too. So let me actually just bring this up just a tad and just bring this down. Cool. So again, we're kind of struggling with the general perspective and then also what looks real as well too. So again, if we're only going to do one camera angle, whatever looks right within that camera angle is probably going to be the best option here. But I will I will say it is definitely kind of tricky to kind of make it make sense as I'm doing this. So but we'll just kind of play around with this and just kind of sacrifice common sense here for, you know, the general perspective here. So which is you know, never really recommended, but you know, I think we can definitely get away with it this time for sure. So again, just really comparing with our original here, just kind of making sure that everything is looking right. Next up, I'm just going to bring in a cube. We're going to shrink this down and just kind of place it over here next to our counter. So again, just kind of making this somewhat a nice shape here. And this is just going to be the mirror that is on the counter. And really, I'm just trying to make sure that it is nice against the wall, but it is kind of sticking out a little bit just so we can kind of see that. And then I'm just going to bring this up and then bring this to the left a little bit. All right, so I'm just going to hop into the Redshift library here, and we're just gonna kind of take a peek. And we're just going to select this one here just because it's a nice, somewhat reflective black here. And I'm just going to throw this on top of the mirror for now, just so we can kind of see this. Of course, that's not how it's going to stay, but for just visual purposes, I like to sometimes throw different, you know, darker materials on there just so I can kind of see it a little bit better here. So all right, so looking pretty good. We can maybe adjust the mirror a little bit more, but other than that, we are kind of getting all of our foundational pieces in order. And then again, just adjusting the counter here just so it is kind of pushed out a little bit more, and then just adjusting this top part of the counter as well. And then we'll just kind of shrink down our mirror, and again, just kind of play with it and see what looks right. Now I'm going to take this back wall here and adjust this. And then we're just going to hop back into our camera and really just make sure that this is as nice as possible before we go any farther here. I think I do need to push up the ceiling, so I'll just do that. So I will say this project, out of the many projects I've worked on, the perspective is just kind of funky here. So I don't know if it's the perspective from like the original or if I'm just kind of just kind of off, but I don't know, there's something kind of weird about this where it's kind of, I mean, it looks like it's a little bit wider here. So let's see, let's go back to our default camera and just kind of look here. Let's kind of push this off to the right here. And then I'm just going to make our counter a little bit bigger. And that is a little bit more to scale to what the counter actually looks like here. So I'm just going to hop back into our Redshift camera and we're just going to slide to the left just a tad here. Let's hop out of our camera and let's just adjust this piece here. Just kind of slide it up to the top and then maybe just kind of bring this down and just kind of widen this out. So let's actually take this and again just kind of widen this out just to make sure the shower is a little bit bigger here. And again, just really adjusting a lot of this here. And same thing with the top, just kind of widening that out too. And we're just going to make sure that is kind of nice and flush on the top there. We're going to just bring that up a little bit. Yeah, to maybe about there. And I know this part is a little finicky, but again, if you can kind of get all of your foundational pieces right, it's definitely going to pay off at the very end here. So super important to really take your time with a lot of this here at the beginning just to make sure that everything is looking good, because if you rush through this, it's just going to look kind of off, and then you're going to have to make a ton of changes here at the end. So again, super important to do this. So that is why we're kind of taking some extra time here. But once we're done with this, we'll hop into materials and kind of start adding a little bit more color to this scene here. So again, just kind of doing our final adjustments here, just kind of messing around with the scale for certain assets and then also kind of the placement as well. What we'll do is just give it a quick save and we're just gonna hop into some of our lights here. So we're just going to bring in a portal light here, and this portal light is going to kind of pump in a little bit more light naturally that we have from our dome light here. So I'm just going to kind of set this up kind of right over here where this window is, just to again kind of bring in a little bit more light here. Of course, since we haven't really put down some of our materials, we will have to adjust our lighting here, but I do want to kind of pump in a little bit more light just so we can kind of both kind of see it and then also kind of, actually add in light to help illuminate the scene here. So cool. So we are looking good to go. I'm just going to hop into grayscale here, type in tile, and we're just going to drop down. And as you can kind of see, there is a ton of different tile options here in grayscale, but we want something kind of similar to our reference, both in the color and in the overall look here. So let's see, let's maybe try this one here. And maybe this one as well. And then I'm just going to hop into our Redshift library, type in tile, and just kind of see if we have anything somewhat similar here as well. And usually I like to kind of bring in a few different ones here just so we can kind of play around with it and see what kind of works from that. All right, so we got our tiles here, so I'm just going to start applying them here. And then let's just kind of see here. So immediately we can kind of tell that the scale is off. And so So we're just going to go into our UV length here. Let's just adjust this here and kind of bring this down maybe to like close to 75 here. All right, next up, we're just going to apply this to the back, and I'm just going to look here, and then we could do something like this where it is a little bit more wide. So let's just kind of bring this in, just kind of see what that looks like. And then we can just go ahead and rotate this and just go ahead and kind of stretch it out a little bit here. And then I'm just going to delete this material and this one, just because I kind of like how this is looking here. And we're just going to go back in and just pump that up to 100. And then we're just going to bring in a area light here real quick and just kind of bring this back towards the camera. And we're just going to cut that into, let's see, about 15 or so here. And really, I'm just kind of looking to see what the render view looks like as it kind of settles down here. I'm just going to hop into our default camera here, just kind of see what that's looking like. And just kind of zoom in here. And then just kind of widen out the roof here. And then I'm just going to go in and change this to cubic. Next up, I'm just going to copy and paste. We're going to rotate this. And we're just going to bring this down just to have that as our floor. And I'm going to bring this up to about there. Yeah, maybe right about there. And then I'm just going to take out this area light here, and then we're just going to go into Grayscale Gorilla, and then we do have some few different options for HDRIs. So I'm gonna do something that is somewhat tropical, maybe like this garden would actually be quite nice here. So let's just download that here and kind of bring that into our dome lights. So I'm just going to copy and then paste in our path. Cool. So that kind of gives us a little bit better overall ambiance. And then I'm just going to turn off the background here. And then we can also go and just kind of turn our dome light here depending on what sort of look we want. Maybe something like that would be good, just because you do have some of the warm light coming in naturally, so that is good there. We can even bump up our intensity here just so we can kind of see a little bit more. And then I'm just going to take this portal light and kind of make this a little bit bigger, just kind of fit the space here. And again, that portal light just kind of naturally brings in more of the light from our dome light here. So it's kind of nice because we're not bringing in any sort of fake lighting, but it's a little bit more realistic and kind of adds to the overall ambiance here. So next up here, we're just going to go and just kind of search for more materials here. So we can do something like this concrete material. Maybe kind of do something for the bottom lip of the shower here. So I kind of like this gray acid stain one. This one's also quite nice too. So I'm gonna go ahead and send that one over, and same with this one. And we're about to see, let's see, let's kind of take that and put this on here. And it's a little bit darker than I wanted. Let's try this one here. Let's take this off and put this one on. Yeah, I like that quite a bit here. And then I'm gonna just take this black and put this on the end here. And then we're just gonna take our tiles and make sure that that backside has some tiles as well. Cool. So slowly but surely we're kind of getting everything in order here. This is actually one of my favorite parts, is actually bringing in the materials and the lighting, just because it kind of brings the scene to life a little bit more. And it's kind of fun seeing it go from, you know, somewhat generic to like somewhat of a realistic looking bathroom here. So all right, so jumping back into Grayscale Gorilla, we do have a ton of other options here for materials, but we're just going to find some sort of wood texture here, and this is going to be for the counter and also this bathtub as well too. So let's actually just go to our materials and type in wood instead, and then we get a little bit more options here. And there's this one, this D wood, that looks pretty nice. There's a few different ones I see here. I do like this one. This is a oak veneer, so let's actually kind of bring that in. Let's jump back into materials and let's try to find some sort of carpet texture here, and let's just go ahead and shoot for this one. Let's see. Let's check out this one. This is kind of like a lime wash paint here, so let's bring that in. And this is going to be good for that far wall over to our left. It's kind of near the painting here, so let's do that on top of the ceiling. And then it is a little dark here. Maybe that's just because of the lighting, but let's kind of bring in the light a little bit more. Let's just crank up the exposure just to kind of see what that looks like. And then I'm just going to take our carpet here and just kind of place it there. And we're just going to crank up our segments, and we're just going to throw in a Redshift tag and just click on all of these just to kind of help with some displacement there. And then next up, we're doing this oak veneer as well. And it is a little warmer here, but let's just kind of check this out. And then let's go back into our lighting here, bring in a area light, and we're just going to kind of turn this about 90 degrees here. And I'm just going to bring this up. And let's just knock this down to 2. And we're just going to bring in this image here and just kind of place it right here where the texture should be. So what I did was I found this cool little jungle image here, so we're just going to kind of replicate the same sort of thing that is in our reference here. So I'm just trying to kind of get a nice little perspective that looks somewhat similar. Obviously it's not the same exact one, but we want to do something comparable here. And let's bring that down to 1. And then we can kind of decrease the opacity here just to make it seem a little bit more natural, where it's just not like one backlight, where it actually looks like it has slightly a different lighting source. We can also put this at an angle to make it look a little bit more right here. And maybe about there looks pretty good. A little bit more realistic than we had it before. We can maybe just push up the intensity just slightly, and I'm just kind of seeing what this looks like. And yeah, not too bad. So we'll bring in another area light here. Let's bring this down, and then we will kind of throw in a JPEG here just to kind of help with the overall ambiance. With this, what I did is I took our reference and we just kind of put it as a texture, so we kind of get the same sort of lighting here as well. So lighting is not too bad. We do have a lot of different highlights and shadows that are normally not in this reference here, so we will have to adjust that, but we'll kind of do that now here. I can kind of move this around and see what this light is interacting with. Maybe put it on the top here. Yeah, maybe something like that. And then I'll just turn these off just so we can kind of see in our viewport a little bit better here. And And then we're just going to take that black and put that on top. All right, so what I'm going to do is just bring in a spotlight here. And I'm just going to move this over, and we're going to start making some of those nice little highlights with the plants here. So we're just going to throw in a gobo here. But first, I'm just going to make the light a little bit warmer so it looks a little bit more natural. We're going to go ahead and paste our gobo here and just kind of move it maybe around kind of here. And we're going to crank up the exposure and then just kind of play with that cone angle. Maybe just kind of widen this out to make it look a little bit bigger. Maybe a slightly different orange here just to make this quite warm. I can also increase the exposure and just rotate this. And then just reduce down this cone angle. I can also do this one here just because this one does seem a little bit busy. So there we go. That's a little bit better, and we could kind of have a little bit more control just because it's not too busy in our reference. So this looks somewhat comparable here. And again, just playing with the cone angle to see kind of how big this is going to be. I think maybe about there is good as far as like the overall size goes. Now I'm just going to turn off a lot of these lights here. And then we can kind of go in and adjust the warmness again. And we'll kind of do that for all of these. All right, so I'm just going to kind of shrink this one down. I'm just going to copy and paste and kind of put this on the top here just for that top lip portion here. I'm just going to copy and paste again. Bring this down, and we're just going to do that for the bottom. Cool. So that was rather simple here. Next, we'll copy and paste again. I'll move this over, increase the size. We'll maybe just kind of do something right here on this corner. Right about there. Yeah, right there. That is actually pretty good. All right, so next up, I'm going to bring in a cylinder. And we're just going to shrink this down and rotate this about 90 degrees. If you see in the reference, this top part kind of has like this little lip here. And so we're just going to recreate that. So I'm just going to bring this down to about here and just make sure that this is kind of stretching throughout this cube here. And I'm just going to set that there, and eventually we are going to make a bool out of that. I'm just going to bring in a area light, and what we're going to do with this is just change it so it is a little bit warmer and just kind of reduce down the intensity to about 5. I'm just going to knock down this to about 2 just because it was a little too bright. And then we're going to kind of change this angle a bit. And maybe kind of bring this over. And I'm going to make sure that there is some light here at the bottom as well. Let's actually bump that to maybe about 2.5 here. And then since there is somewhat of a shadow on the right side, I'm just going to push this to the left here. And then we're just going to adjust our spread just so the light kind of dies off near the end here. And then I'm just going to increase that light just a bit here. Now I'm just going to box this out just so we can kind of see this kind of react a little bit quicker here. Yeah, maybe about there. It's not too bright and the light kind of spreads out a little bit more, and then but we still kind of get that that nice kind of fine line there here on the right side. So we're just going to copy and paste that lights, and then we're going to try to create this highlight that is on the right hand side as well. Now the trick with this is it is at an angle, so we're going to turn this, and then at the same time too, we got to make sure that we keep that shadow on the bottom right. So let's just kick down that intensity and maybe just reduce down the spread. Maybe I'll back this up a little bit. And we can kind of just move this up here. And let's see, let's rotate this. Here we go. So it's not shining directly on there. And then we'll kind of make this go off to the right here. Now we can kind of crank this up by just a little bit here, maybe at 1.5. And then I'm just going to kind of paste in our reference image just to kind of get the same overall lighting. And I'll just kind of move this to the right a little bit more. And then just kind of angle it so we kind of get something that is rather similar, but we're not getting those crazy highlights there. So that is a little bit more tame, kind of a softer light there. And then I'm just going to save it real quick. We could go ahead and grab this light here, and then we're just going to jump back into Grayscale Gorilla, and we're just going to type in vase, and we're going to get something that is similar to our reference here. Let's actually do this one, and then let's actually go to our Redshift library here, and none of these are really looking like I want. And then, but this is actually nice here, this bowl here, just to kind of make maybe the sink here. But let's see, and let's do the same thing, type in a towel. And this one is pretty good as well, so we'll just go ahead and import that. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this bowl up here, and let's just kind of place it off to the left hand side, and we will just kind of increase that, and we will save that, and then maybe bring this a little bit more forward, and then just kind of shrink this down and up a little bit to maybe about there. I'm just going to copy and paste and move this one out to the right. That should be okay for now, and then we can always adjust those bowls later. What I'm going to do is actually go ahead and copy and paste this. And then we're going to shrink that down. I'm going to apply this oak veneer. We're just going to go ahead and apply this material as well to the top. And that is looking a little bit better. We can always kind of tweak it a little bit, but let's see. So let's go and grab these two, both the cylinder and the cube, and let's rearrange this here. Let's go ahead and do subtract here, and that's going to give us that nice little angle that we're looking for there. I can move this up about there, and then I can just kind of stretch this out throughout this entire cube here. And then all the way to the end. Cool. And then let me just hop into perspective just to check on this. So there is the white here. So let's go ahead and apply the oak. There we go. Cool. So that looks a little bit better there. So getting in some of the details, and we'll just kind of take a peek here. We'll hop back into our Redshift camera and kind of take a glance at this reference. And then with this, we're just going to kick this down to about 50% each. All right, so now we're going to grab this vase. Always give it a save before we kind of mess with the scale. And we're just going to make that a little bit bigger there. And maybe just kind of set it right there. So let's jump back into Grayscale Gorilla. Let's type in ceramics here. And let's see if we can get some sort of ceramic texture. Could do something like this, even though this isn't necessarily ceramic. This is kind of a little bit more representative of that pot that we have over there as far as like the overall color goes. So let's go ahead and bring that in, and let's just do this one as well too, just to kind of see what that looks like. And we'll go ahead and apply that color, and let's see what this darker one's like. And yeah, that one's a little bit better. And then I'm just gonna move this vase to the top here. And then we're just going to go ahead and grab another bokeh as well. I'm going to bring in a sphere. And we're going to kind of increase those segments to about 32. And then just decrease that radius. And then we're just going to bring this over. And we're just going to kind of shape this with the sphere just to make it look a little bit more like the image here. So let's crank this down a little bit and kind of put this in place. And then put these two into the bokeh. And go ahead and go down to subtract. And then we'll just flip this here. Cool. So that looks a little bit better there. Just trying to figure out, maybe widen this a little bit more. It does seem kind of like quite a big pot here, especially with that bigger plant. So I would imagine it would have kind of a bigger opening there. And then I'm gonna just go ahead and take that texture off. Actually, let's maybe put it back on. It kind of lightens it up a little bit. It's kind of like in between those two. Let's see what this one's like. Yeah, let's maybe put this one back on. It's close. Let's stick with this one, see how that goes. Next up, just gonna copy and paste that one and move this over. And let's just kind of widen that one out a little bit more. And then we'll go ahead and put that material on. And same thing with this one as well. And then with that, we necessarily don't have to do that, but I just want to make sure just in case, you know, we're not missing any sort of details there. So cool. So it is starting to come together piece by piece here. Next up, we have this towel here, and let's just rotate this to see what this side looks like. And that side is actually pretty good. We'll go ahead and shrink that down. And just kind of move this. And I know I didn't save it there, so but just remember when you're doing that just to save it, because you never know if it's gonna crash on you. So I think that is about right as far as the general position and scale of that towel. Yeah, looks okay. Let's go back into Grayscale, and then let's type in towel here. Let's actually see what some of these materials look like. And there's nothing too much there. Let's actually go into our Redshift library. And they do have these carpets. Let's see here. There are these basket weaves, which is going to be pretty nice, especially for this pot on the top left where the counter is. So we might need to pull in one of those. Let's go ahead and type in basket here. And with doing this too, I feel like I get a little distracted. So sometimes I come across something, I go, oh, I mean, that might actually look pretty good for something else that we have. So so sometimes I'll be working on something and then, you know, something looks nice, or I come across something and then, you know, plans plans seem to change. But I'm sure we'll jump back to that towel here. And of course we have tons of different plants, so I'm just trying to see if we have any sort of plants that are going to look good for our scene. And look at that, we actually found this. Let's actually bring this in. We were just talking about the towel here, so let's bring that in. And then I do tend to forget they have a ton of different materials here in the Redshift library. I tend to really stick to grayscale just because it's, I don't know, it just seems so much more complete than what Cinema4d has to offer. But we'll just kind of take a look here. These seem rather new as well. But yeah, we have quite a bit of options actually. So I'm actually kind of surprised. It seems like they expanded it quite a bit here. So let's go ahead and exit that out. Let's go ahead and apply this green. And yeah, not too bad. Kind of a different green than what they had, but you know, it's not bad at all. So let's actually reduce down the UV length of that to make sure that it isn't clumping up too much. And then what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and copy and paste this, and we'll just kind of thicken it a little bit, and we'll just reduce down the size here. And for these, we'll kind of start making the shelves. Shelves are rather simple, just kind of getting them in the right spot is probably what we'll have to focus on. And then we'll copy and paste this, bring this one up. We'll go ahead and copy and paste that as well and just bring that over. And then we'll do another one for this top portion here. So about there would be good. And then we'll apply that wood texture to these. Pretty straightforward there. So cool. I think what's cool about this too is just kind of seeing it all come together. So especially just kind of knowing what this started out as and what we've kind of done to it as far as all of the materials, the lighting, you know, just trying to really replicate what this looks like. So all right, so I'm going to take this, copy and paste. We're just going to move this light here. And I'm just going to save it real quick. And we're just going to move this over. Just reduce the cone angle. And kind of help kind of create that highlight that is on the counter here. And then let's just kind of play with this cone angle. I'm just going to go back into grayscale. Maybe grab this one here. Go ahead and paste. And just because it has a little bit more you know, kind of vegetation in the gobo, we can kind of play around with it a little bit more, just because it's not like a major highlight here. There is little bit of variation within this light here. So to kind of replicate that, throwing in some sort of gobo that has quite a bit of, you know, vegetation is gonna help kind of mix it up here. So just maybe crank up the exposure just to kind of see. That is good. Let's drop the exposure down to 4, and then we'll just kind of move this to about there. Let's go down to 3, and then just change this curve, and then adjust this cone angle. I kind of like that here. Man, there's so many good options here. Let's maybe pick one. Yeah, we'll make it about there. Cool. So next up, what I'm gonna do is just copy and paste this cube here, and we're just gonna make the outline of this mirror here. So again, just copy and paste, move this one over, and then copy and paste again. We're gonna rotate this one about 90 degrees. Bring this one down and just kind of adjust this here. Yeah, it's maybe about there. And then copy and paste again, move this one up. Cool. So that is a little bit better there. And then we're just gonna copy and paste this, shrink this down, and then this is actually going to be the mirror. Yeah, right about there. And let's go into our Redshift library. We'll go ahead and grab this mirror. And let's go ahead and bring in a bokeh. And then let's kind of throw these cubes in a bokeh here. And then now you can kind of see it's a little bit more like a frame. And then I'm just trying to adjust it, just because we do kind of see some of the black here on the sides and the top. And then we'll throw in that cube. And then we'll kind of put the mirror texture on top, and that is looking good there. So cool. So for now, I'm just going to turn this off just so it's not kind of slowing down the render view here. All right, so next up, we're going to go into our Redshift library here. We're going to type in plants, and we're going to find some plants here. So maybe let's do plant palm. So we're just going to bring in this one. And then we're just going to move this one over to the vase here. And then this is what it looks like. So we will have to kind of reduce the scale down, maybe about there. Kind of raise this up. And then we're going to go ahead and rotate that. And then we can also box this out as well, just to kind of help with the responsiveness of the render view. And I think I kind of like this angle. That looks quite nice here. Let's go back into our Redshift library here. And let's maybe pull in this one here. And then what we'll do is we'll just rotate this. Kind of put this off to the side. And then just kind of adjust this so it looks somewhat similar, and then just make sure it's not clipping here. All right, so I'm just going to move the camera and hop into perspective here. And so with this, I just want to make sure that this isn't clipping into our wall here. then I'll just kind of make that a little bit bigger as well. Cool. And I'm just going to go ahead and give it a quick save. Next up, I'm just going to hop into our Redshift library here, and they do have this here as well. So we're just going to bring this in, and we're just going to throw this into the back right area. Just to kind of make that look a little bit busier back here. But yeah, I think this is a good stopping spot before we start to kind of get a little bit more into the details. So let's hop into the wrap up section and finish this off. All right, so jumping into the wrap up section, I think we have completed quite a bit of stuff here already. We have done some light modeling, and then we have been able to piece in a few of our materials as well. We have kind of played around with lighting and brought in some gobos, and then, you know, a PNG as well too, to kind of give us that outside perspective as well. But yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this one. I'm looking forward to this next one. So this next one, we're going to kind of focus in a little bit more of our details. So we're really going to kind of fix up this bathtub that is on the right hand side here. And then as far as the shower goes, we still have to throw in the shower head and a lot of those different soap bottles as well too. And then a few other details as well. So we're just kind of missing some lighting here on the ceiling, and then we do have some other details that we're going to kind of put in to this kind of bathroom sink area here. So, but yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. I'm excited for this next one. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.